back to my Mexican kitchen here in Switzerland. Here in the area of Switzerland that I live in, and especially my village, we are getting snow big time. I mean, in all the years I've been living here, and from people that I've been talking to, which have been living here for the expats, obviously, that have been living here longer, and also like reading the news and stuff, you see they haven't had this much snow in this area in many, many, many years. Literally, we're covered in it. And as I've mentioned before, I really love baking, and when I look out the window, that's often why I'm looking around. I get to see the part of my garden. I'm seeing like big fluffy snow. It's beautiful. It looks like white chocolate, and that makes me want to bake. So I thought I would make you guys the recipe for chocolate chip cookies, the best chocolate chip cookies. They're chewy, they're gooey, and you're gonna love it. So let's start baking. The ingredients you need to make your chocolate chip cookies are 230 grams of butter, the equivalent is 1 cup. 200 grams of white sugar, the equivalent is 1 cup. 170 grams of brown sugar, it can be light brown or dark brown, the equivalent is 1 cup. 400 grams of flour, the equivalent is 3 cups. 30 grams of cornstarch, the equivalent are 3 tablespoons. 3 teaspoons of vanilla extract. 2 eggs, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, half a teaspoon of baking powder, 1 teaspoon of sea salt. Here you have to make sure it's pure sea salt and not the iodized one. Otherwise the amount you're going to have to use will be different. And 1.5 cups of chocolate chips. Okay, so before we get started, there's something that I think it's very important, even if it feels like I'm talking too much, that I should explain to you guys. I asked for sea salt, and by sea salt, of course, I mean pure sea salt, not the iodized one, because you can get those 2 types in the shop. As a good Mexican, I like to carry a lot of stuff when I fly back, and this one I usually buy when we go to the beach, Puerto Vallarta, which is really awesome if you guys haven't been there. I usually bring back 1 or 2 of these when we go. And why am I asking for pure sea salt? The salt tastes different if it's iodized and if it's pure sea salt. So the iodized one, which is also healthy, it's just as healthy as this one. We need the iodine in our bodies for thyroid and a bunch of other stuff, which I'm not sure what for, but I know it's good. The point is, it tastes different. So this one you can use in larger amounts. That's why when you watch cooking shows, you see the chefs adding tons of salt and you're like, oh my God, that's too much. It's not that it's too much, it's just that this salt it's less strong. Iodized salt is stronger. So whatever salt I ask for the recipe, if you're using the iodized amount, use half. Like that, if you don't want to buy just pure sea salt, you can use the iodized salt, but use half the amount of what I asked, just to make that clear, because if you use the whole amount I asked for and it's not pure sea salt, your cookies are going to be really salty, probably not nice, so just to make that clear. And okay, now let's get started. To make the recipe a bit more simple, what we're going to do is we're going to grab a bowl and we are going to sift all our dry ingredients. So either with a colander or with a special sifter, you're going to put your flour, your cornstarch, your baking powder, your baking soda, and your salt, and you're going to sift them into the bowl. Once it's sifted, we're going to put that aside because we don't need it right now. And in our mixer, with using the globe attachment, we're going to put our butter, which has to be room temperature. That's very important. Don't use melted butter and don't use hard butter because you will get a different texture for your cookies. We want nice, fluffy, chewy cookies, so if you use melted, they'll probably be a bit too gooey, and if it's hard butter, it'll take a while to cream it. So if it's room temperature, all you have to do is, if you want to make the cookies, take your butter out earlier before you start baking, and as soon as you can press your finger into the butter, it's ready to use. So you put your butter, you cream it, and then you're going to add your sugars. You're going to add your brown sugar and your white sugar. I'm using light brown sugar, but it doesn't matter if you want to use dark one, it'll be just as nice. And this part is very important because it's the only part of the recipe that you can really whisk for a really long time. So we want to dissolve the sugar as best possible. It's not going to fully dissolve, but you really want to whip that sugar and butter so it gets fluffy, and maybe about 5 minutes. It's important to do these things. So really whip your butter, and after that we're going to add the eggs and the vanilla extract. and we're going to continue mixing. You can mix another 1, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, as much as you want, so that you really see a nice fluff in there. Because once we add the dry ingredients, there you have to barely mix, otherwise you develop gluten, which makes things harder. So once the dry ingredients are in there, you just barely mix until it's integrated and you have to stop. So once you have that nice fluffy texture from the butter and the sugars and the eggs and all these things I mentioned, now we can add our dry ingredients. So just with a spoon in the flour, and keep spooning it in non-stop until you finish adding it. And as soon as you peek in there and you see that it's been integrated, quickly stop. You can continue mixing with a spatula. And we're going to add our chocolate chips there. You mix, and that would be it. Okay, so I hope you guys paid attention that when I added the dry ingredients, it was just a nothing of time that it mixed in there and I turned it off. That's really important if you want your cookies to have a nice texture. And like I said, just add the chocolate chips after and with a spatula mix them in, and that will also mix in any flour or dry ingredients that didn't really mix in with the mixers, because sometimes they're not very good at scraping the sides, and if we forget to be pulling it down with the spatula, you may have some dry bits in there. That being said, what we're going to do is we're going to chill our dough for 1 to 2 hours. So just cover it with some plastic film in the same bowl like that. You don't have to dirty anything else. And leave it in your fridge for 1 to 2 hours. This dough doesn't need to be chilled as much as other cookie doughs that I've showed you, because it's not really going to keep its form. The cookie, like any chocolate chip cookie, is going to melt and expand. Other cookies, we do want them to keep a nice tight shape. So for this one, it's 1 to 2 hours is more than enough. Okay, so the dough has been chilled. So what we have to do before we start making our cookies is we have to preheat our oven at 325 degrees Fahrenheit or 165 Celsius. And what we're going to do, your aim to make the cookies is you have to make tall forms. You don't want anything low, because the cookie is going to melt in the oven. So you want it to be not super thick, but just that it has the right consistency, so it's chewy and gooey. So you have to make something tall. So I'll show you. Just eyeball the amounts. It doesn't need to be weighed or perfect. You just have to try to make all your cookies about the same size, but it doesn't have to be super exact. So what I do is just cylinders. It's funny, but it's going to end up looking like a round cookie, even if it looks funny. It's nothing perfect. And the important thing here is, depending on the size of your tray, is how many cookies you can manage to put on it. So my trays are pretty large. I'm going to put 9 cookies. I don't want to put too many, because when the cookie starts baking and melting, they're going to stick together maybe if you don't leave too much space. So in my tray, I can perfectly fit 9 cookies without them sticking together. And if they stick together, nothing happens. They're yummy anyhow. But if you want them to look super pretty, just make sure you leave enough space depending on the size of your tray. Once you finish making all your cookies, all your little towers of dough, you're going to bake it for 13 minutes. And after that, take them out of your oven and leave them on your tray for about 10 minutes. They're going to look like they're still raw, but don't worry, they're not raw. And after the 10 minutes, all you have to do is scoop them off and put them on a cooling wire, so that they finish cooling down, and then they're going to have the more cookie texture that you're looking forward to, and not the soft dough which still looks raw. It's going to change a lot, but don't worry if they look raw, they're not. So really trust me on this. Okay, so we are done baking. I had to use the oven twice because it was 4 trays of cookies, so we're going to have a lot of cookies to enjoy. Yum yum. As you can see, I already have the first batch cooling down on the rack. The second batch is still cool. It kind of finishes cooking on the tray. Since it's warm, it keeps baking in there somehow. And then after the 10 minutes, then I transfer them over here like I mentioned earlier. But look at how nice they are. They are perfect. I would crack one open right now, but then it's going to seem like it's raw, and it's not raw. You really have to let them cool down on the wire rack so that they finish the whole process and they look perfect. But they are, I guarantee, the best cookies you guys have ever had chocolate chip wise. They are really amazing. The texture, everything is perfect. I hope you guys enjoy the video. I hope you make the cookies. If you're in a nice, if you're enjoying winter wherever you're living, keep warm, enjoy some cookies. If you're enjoying summer, I'm envious. I prefer summer over winter. And I'll see you guys in the next video.